Okay, so the first question is, I did some background checks on you, and your LinkedIn profile says that you are an avid PC and console gamer, and yet you are in charge of Wargaming's mobile operations.
Yes.
So where do your gaming loyalties lie, actually?
So I will admit, since I've joined Wargaming, I haven't exactly been scrupulous about updating my LinkedIn profile. Haven't felt a need. I am definitely still look at my core. I am still an old school PC console gamer guy. I love shooters. I love RTSs. I love strategy games. You know, turn-based, real-time. You name it. Right, like all the RPGs, action RPGs. I love all that stuff. My love of mobile games has only come in the last few years as games have gotten cool enough and complex enough on mobile, right? As they've stopped being just basically alarm clock simulators. Push a button, so that a half hour later you can come and push another button, and then maybe in 3 hours you can come and push another button again. Those aren't games. So now, though, we've got all these awesome games, right, that you can play on mobile. Now I'm a mobile gamer, too.
Yeah, okay. Another key thing that I discovered about you is that you actually are a registered member of the State Bar of California, and so you have a degree in law. The Doctor of Jurisprudence or something? So why give up all the lawyering for video games? How did that happen?
So when I first joined Activision, my first job there, my first year actually was as a lawyer. I had worked for 3 years. Before that, I'd worked at Capitol Records. I was in the music business as a lawyer there. Moved into Activision as a lawyer, and about a year into my time at Activision, a guy named Ron Dornick came in as the new then company president. And Ron looked around and realized one of the problems that we had at that time was there wasn't a green light process. So the development teams were running around making things, moving on a schedule, and the marketing teams were running around moving on a schedule, and they weren't always the same schedule. And it led to some real problems. Like real problems sometimes. So we set up, Ron asked me to move away from law into building and running this greenlight process where we'd be able to keep track of what's going on so that we'd be better able to manage everything. And that we wouldn't have things slip through the cracks or deadlines get missed without people knowing it was going to happen or things like that. And then from there, a couple of years in, then I moved from this, what was kind of a development, sort of a central oversight role, where I got to see hundreds and hundreds of things going through these greenlight phases. And so got to learn really quickly what a good game looks like at prototype versus what a game that didn't make it to good looked like at prototype and all that. Then I moved into production from there and started working on some like old PC stuff. At that point, it was Vampire the Masquerade, the Bloodlines piece, fun game, ahead of its time, ahead of Valve. Also, actually, we managed to ship the we code released that before Half-Life 2 actually did, and then we had to wait to ship it. That was the deal. But worked on that, a bunch of other stuff. Then got into working on Call of Duty and. Kept on that for the next 10 years, worked on Destiny, a bunch of other stuff like that. Some great games, some other games that I'll guarantee you've never heard of too. But yeah, I got to work on some really cool stuff there.
What does it take for a company such as Activision to roll out like huge titles like they do with Call of Duty titles like every year? How do you as a publisher keep that commitment?
Well, look, so, we did a few years in, right, we came up with this idea of this kind of like hopscotch sort of rollover leapfrog development, right? Infinity Ward working on it, then Treyarch, and so that at least everybody got 2 years to make a good game. Well, 2 years back then, 2 years was comfortable, right? Now, you've got people taking 3 years to make games and things like that. But 2 years was, you could do good stuff in 2 years. 1 year was super difficult, right? 2 years was enough that you could actually breathe and think about it and build something cool. And that worked. If you look at what the other things that happened, right? There was a point where Activision said, okay, hey, let's do less, right? Let's not do 1 million games. Let's do a few games so that we can really focus our resources on it. And then honestly, if you look at, what's going on with wargaming now, that's more and more what's happening with wargaming as well, right? Focus on the things that can really work. Focus on the big games that a lot of people are going to love and be interested in. Devote tons of resources to that to make sure that it's great. And, not sort of waste your efforts around 100 different things.
So why don't you tell us how you left Activision and how you joined Wargaming?
Sure. So at the end of 2014, when Destiny finally had shipped, which was, 5 years of my life, and it was a very productive time, obviously, and it was super satisfying to be through it, right? But so I'd been there for 17 years, right? I joined in 1997, and finally 2014 it left. I'm sure you can imagine the company wasn't exactly the same place, from when I joined to when I left. And even in that last 5 years with Destiny, things changed a lot. Like when I first got there, man, it was a remarkably dynamic company. It was small, it was scrappy, right? The question wasn't, could Activision be the biggest game publisher in the world, right? The question was, could they be the biggest game publisher whose name began with A, right? Like, could you beat Atari, Acclaim, Accolade, right? And honestly, it was like quarter by quarter, every 90 days, were we going to keep going, right? Now that, that's challenging, right? But at the same time, it also makes you very adaptable. It makes you really work hard to, when every 90 days could be your last 90 days, you work hard and you get really creative and you take risks, right? As the company matured and as we found successes through taking some of these risks, the company changed. And by the end, it was the biggest game publisher there is, and the kind of, the hops I just told you about in my career, going from legal into greenlight into production, those kind of things really didn't happen so much, right? By the end, it was a mature organization that had, processes and roles and swim lanes, and everything was very regimented. And now I learned a ton there, right? The time there that I got was incredibly valuable, but it was just a very different time. And I think for both of us, right? For me and for them, by the end of it, it was sort of, we'd had enough of each other's crap.
All right.
Right? And we needed to move on.
Okay.
And then coming to Wargaming, I first I'd heard about Wargaming through these crazy E3 parties with Victor coming out in the toga and all, as World of Tanks shot like a rocket out of nowhere, in the industry. And that was several years before. But when I was then looking around trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? Do I start my own thing? Do I go somewhere else? Whatever. And getting lots of advice from lots of different people about what I should be doing. I called Chris Taylor, who I'd never worked with Chris, but I'd known him through industry events and things like this, conferences.
And Chris Taylor is who?
Chris Taylor was the head of a team called Gas Powered Games, one of the legendary game designers.
All right.
Supreme Commander and all these games before that, Dungeon Siege, things like that. A brilliant guy, super creative. Now, he'd been running an independent studio for a long time, so I called him figuring he'd know sort of the landscape of the industry, right? Kind of, maybe be able to help me figure out who might be looking for somebody like me, right? What could make sense? What I hadn't realized was that Chris's team, Gas Powered, had actually been bought by Wargaming at that point. And so when it started talking to him, he said, "Oh God, you should, come talk to the guys in the North American office, right? I'm sure they'd love to talk to you." And then I found out not only was Chris there were some other guys that I'd worked with and, had crossed paths with in the industry before. And then from there, I met Victor and everybody and realized that Wargaming was in a lot of ways exactly at the point that Activision was in, call it 2002 or 3.
Oh.
Right? It had a huge success on, basically driven by one game mostly, right?
Yeah.
But a huge, huge success. It had suddenly shot up, from hundreds of employees, I think I was 200 or something at Activision, to thousands of employees, offices worldwide. And a lot of the things about it, right? It was like a teenager that just wakes up one day and suddenly the pants are too short and the shirt's too tight.
All right.
You know, all the infrastructure didn't fit, right? And it was just throwing everything it could to try to make tanks bigger and better and all that. And that same feeling of, wow, anything is possible, and adventure,
pioneering
and all
spirit.
That. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that was there, right?
Yeah.
So I connected with that, and I loved it. And geez, it's not even 5 years at Wargaming. I think I'm on my 5th or 6th job here.
Right.
So that feeling, right, is that I think I didn't realize it at Activision, right? But I had grown to miss it, right? And now that I have it again, I really love it.
But you had to relocate, right? Because before you were based in LA, I think?
Yeah.
California. And then you had to relocate to Cyprus, I think?
Yep.
And then there was Minsk. How did that work out for you?
So, when I first moved from Los Angeles to Northern California, the Bay Area, where Wargaming's North American headquarters was, I'd lived for 25 years in Los Angeles. I grew up in Chicago, but I went to law school in UCLA and 25 years there between that, all the time at Activision. So I'd really grown into it.
Mm-hmm.
And this move from LA to San Francisco was what we thought would be the big move. People talk about, oh my God, like the cultural difference between Southern California and Northern California. It's comical to think about it now, right? A 1-hour plane ride, same time zone, same state, same politics, same kind of thought process overall. There are differences, but they look so small now in comparison, right? And I made that move thinking, okay, this is the big move, relocating to the Bay Area. Whoa.
Yeah.
And then a few months in, after initially being told, don't worry about World of Tanks, worry about some other things.
Right.
Victor kind of came to me with the Godfather offer of, hey, I want to make some changes on tanks, and I want you to come in and be the executive producer. Well, look, when you get offered the keys to the Lamborghini, right? You
did not say no.
Yeah, like that's just not a job you can turn down, right? How many times in my life am I going to be asked to do something like that, right? So I said, yeah. I made the move out to nominally to Cyprus. Realistically, I was spending most of my time in Minsk at that point because that's where the game's getting done.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm going to run the development, I really need to be where the developers are.
Yeah.
So I was there about half my time, half the time there, basically 2 weeks there, 1 week in Cyprus, checking in with the corporate side and all the execs, and then 1 week anywhere, the North American office, the European office, a trade show, a conference, a PR event, a strategy session, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. All over the place. It was a great time. I loved it. But yeah, in a way I didn't have a home, right? I was living out of a lot of hotels at that point. And so it's been nice to now move into a role where I'm able to, settle down a little bit more.
Okay.
And although it still puzzles my friends in Los Angeles sometimes when I say it, I really do love Minsk. I think it's a great city. It's really incredible. It's the safest, cleanest, prettiest city I've ever been in by far. The people there are great. There's a little similarity actually to like the Chicago, like these good, hardworking Midwesterners that you read about in the U.S. People aren't obsessed with money and they aren't obsessed with status, and they value you for who you are, right? And what you can do, not, what kind of... Yeah, it's not that, right? So I'm having a ton of fun with it.
But were you specifically brought in to introduce or implement some sort of practices that you maybe learned at Activision? Was that the catch?
Yeah, a bit of it. I mean, as we started talking originally in January and February of 2015, it became clear kind of to both sides, like there were so many things that were familiar for me, right? Like here I was talking with a team that didn't have a green light process, where the production and development, the development and marketing groups were just fighting each other all the time. There were these huge conflicts between, Cyprus and Minsk, between the central offices and the regional offices. dev marketing, you name it, right? Conflicts like that all over the place. The green light process needed to come in and help that out. They were working on even think about the subject of the game, right? A World War II themed PC action shooter game, trying to figure out how do you build that into something, how do you maintain that and build it to bigger, like the parallels. People talk about, hey, if I had that to do over again, how many people actually literally get to do it over again, right? I actually got to do that. So it was great because, I was able to come in and go, well, look, maybe it's wrong for this situation, but I can tell you when we did this over there, this is how we handled it, and this is what was good about that, and this is what was bad. There's a lot to learn because free-to-play is a different model, very different, and I had to learn a lot very quickly. But I was able to add enough, development is development, right? Like, it doesn't matter how you're selling it. The way that you build a game and how you make something that's really cool and fun and interesting, that kind of doesn't change. It doesn't change PC to mobile either, right? Like, there's a core honesty to that, right? That starts with make something really, really fun, get the core right, and then everything else kind of follows.
That's what I wanted to ask about. You first started working on Thane's PC, is that right? And then you transitioned to mobile.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that?
Well, so some of it was just sort of right place, right time.
Yeah.
My time on PC, I came in, we moved from this very sort of function-led structure, which was where Wargaming was originally. Very much big development, big marketing, all that. And the product was kind of caught in the middle sometimes to this product-led structure. And I was the first product director in the company, right? Where I was going to be now, Victor would call me the big boss of tanks and all this. And it was a good transition. It was kind of rocky in some ways, but we got it there. And then it got to a point where it was, once that battle was fought, then, some of the other guys were ready to kind of step up and lead that on. And there were other things that Victor wanted me to think about doing. And, we started looking at different stuff. Because honestly, if I had started immediately onto Tanks, Blitz, mobile, that would have been learning free-to-play and mobile kind of all at the same time. It would have probably been a little bit much, right?
Okay.
Oh, and also cultural differences and so on, right? This was kind of a baby step. It wasn't the way we drew it up on paper, right? But it ended up working out really well that me learning these things, right? Learning wargaming, learning working with CIS, learning free-to-play, then transition over, take that into mobile. It's worked out really well. It's kind of given me the time to absorb it, learn it, figure out where I can add, and then move on to the next thing.
And when you joined World of Tanks Blitz team, what exactly were you walking into?
The thing I was walking into was a certain level of
some dude.
This fucking guy. Yeah, especially who's this guy with the funny accent, right? Like, who's this new Westerner dude?
Yeah.
Right, what are we doing here? Now, thankfully, all those guys could just ask the guys that have worked with me on Tanks PC, and, my references checked out, right? So that helped. But, look, with any new team, there is an earning it phase, right? It doesn't, even if you're the boss, it doesn't matter. You need to earn the trust and respect of the team, right? They need to know you're there for them, that you've got their back, right? That you want to do good things for the product and for them and everything. And you're not going to come in and just start, firing wildly in the air and doing random things or, with politics and nonsense, right? So, the first few months was basically just sitting down and spending a lot of time with the team and saying, hey, how's your job work, right? What's working for you well and what's working for you poorly, right? What can we do better? Of course, being it's a CIS developer, we walked right into the what's happening poorly part.
Yeah.
But it was great, right? Because we got it was a well-run team, but we got these million things that people were frustrated about, right? Whether they were game or process or tools or whatever. And that kind of formed my agenda, right? For the first 90 days to 6 months of like, I'm just going to go fix all those things,
all right?
Right? And make it so that, look, if the dev team is comfortable and if they feel like they can do their job well, right? If they don't feel that bureaucracy is getting in the way, if their tools allow them to iterate really quickly, right? They make better stuff. they're happy, they're engaged, they do their work better. The players end up feeling that, right? And one of the things I love about working for Victor, he's got this very sort of deep mantra of happy players, right? That if the players are happy and they love your game, the payment stuff, that'll come, right? That'll work itself out. So start with the most important thing, make something great. And so, doing that, starting there really ended up working. We also worked on publishing tools and things like that so that not only were the game makers, developers happier, right? But the people who were actually trying to sell things could do their jobs better. And we could make offers to players that players wanted with far less delay. It allowed us to just be a lot more agile. So that was the biggest stuff that we had to do to be able to move in and improve on something that was already really good when I got there.
How is Tanks Blitz doing right now?
So we actually, we just celebrated our 5th birthday in
Congratulations.
June. Thank you. And interestingly enough, in this last year, right, since we've started we've set records for kind of everything on the project. User numbers, MAU, DAO, CCU, all these kinds of things, revenue, profit, even from a quality standpoint, like we had our highest ever rated update on the App Store, right, a few months back. So, in that first year, we had a game. Look, Blitz has been solid for a long time, right? But suddenly it started going up again, which is, it's hard for that to happen on a 5-year-old game, right? We feel really good about that. Players have returned. We got rid of some features that players hated. There was this thing called spare parts, which was kind of a grind introduction, mobile grindy mechanic that players hated.
Yeah.
That got introduced about a year and a half earlier, and one of the first things we did was we killed that. It was interesting because we found out that as a result of doing that, there was this one clan that was preparing to leave in the game. They were going to quit. And when they found out we were killing spare parts, they decided to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So, players are back. We're getting a lot of win back players who are old players coming back and playing again. People are enjoying it. The team's having fun. I'm having fun. Victor's happy. It's a love fest.
Is there a formula? How do you achieve that after 5 years on the market?
Honestly, I think, like I said, it's all the stuff we just talked about. Like it starts with remembering that no matter how well you're doing, you can always do it better, right? And no matter how good the results are, you can always improve it. And the first thing you do, right, is you start by looking at what you're doing yourself, right? And asking, what could we do better? How could we improve it, right? How could we make it work more and better for us? And I think, for, me coming in and when the 4 guys left, my whole leadership team are all people who have been on Blitz for quite a while, but they're all in new roles, right? So I'm the new guy. They're all coming into higher level jobs. We all had a ton of ambition, right, around what we could do to make it better. And it's been great, right? Because I walked right into a team of people who wanted to just go to the moon with it, right? To do everything as well as they possibly could, and who had a million ideas about how to make it better as well. So for me, it was just sort of sifting through, how do we make sure these are all things that everybody can get behind and support, that players will feel very quickly, right? And again, when you do that, right, if you just don't accept that good enough is good enough, if you don't accept that the answer, this is how we've always done it, is a good reason for anything, because it's not, then you can really see improvement, right? Then you can really see change and make things better and better and better.
And in terms of team culture, how has the team evolved as the game matured over these
really
years?
Well, I think. Yeah. I mean, again, the initial oh crap, who's FNG, right? Okay. FN new guy. That melted away over time as people realized, okay, he's here actually, he's just trying to help, mm-hmm. right? Just trying to make things better. And it's worked out really well. One of the things that's really helped is, we've, Victor, I talk about him like some kind of an angel sometimes, but he's just a brilliant guy to work for. One of the things Victor really believes in is when Wargaming succeeds, we should make sure the team feels that, right? That they're part of that success. They get mm-hmm. rewarded for it. So we have what is effectively a profit sharing plan where, so when we raise revenue and profit and all that, the team sees some of that back, right? So, it starts with, I used to call it, we try to remove the thumbtack that somebody's been sitting on in their chair for 3 years, right? That they just got used to. Yeah. We try to remove as many of those as possible, right? In process and whatever. Let them iterate faster, do their job better. Yeah. Then when that starts to lead to some success and there's financial results that come out of that, and the team suddenly sees bonuses, right? And bonuses that are bigger than they've ever had and that kind of thing coming in, that helps, right? Look, if people want to do great work, everybody does, right? And when they feel that they can, when they feel like you're removing the obstacles for them to do that, when you're not putting a bunch of bullshit in politics in their way and letting them focus on their job, when you're paying them well for the results of that, right? They get into that. They rise to that challenge, right? And look, the fact that the team is unbelievably talented, that doesn't hurt either.
All right. For you personally, though, what is the most challenging thing about running that team?
Oh, boy. I would certainly say that early on, one of the things that I had to get used to, right, was, and this is all of Wargaming, I had to adapt to working with a very different culture from what I was used to, and obviously the language.
Yeah.
It's not as hard as you'd think. Like, the language thing was actually relatively easy. Look, the level of English comprehension in the studio is pretty high. I've spent, 3 years now learning Russian.
All right.
I'm at the point of, I can understand a lot. My ability to speak is still sort of, I have to think about it really hard, and my accent can be comical, I think, sometimes. I was at the airport in Minsk on the way here, and I asked the girl for cola and water in Russian, because I usually try to do that, and she just giggled and answered me in English, and I thought, oh God, yeah, nice.
She decided to put you out of your misery.
Yeah. Like, I guess my accent, is bad enough that she was just like, oh, that's so cute.
Okay.
But the at this point especially, right? Like, it's relatively easy. Even if I have to speak in English and somebody else has to speak in Russian, we can actually usually understand each other fine. So
that's
that part's not so bad. Yeah, it's taken a while to get there. At the beginning I was in the Yablaka kind of phase, right? But now it's, day by day is okay. But the bigger one to learn actually was these sort of cultural markers, right? And I remember the North American office, these guys had warned me coming in. They said, you gotta, be careful when you go to Minsk, man. Like, they're gonna just punch you right in the face right away. You gotta be ready to fight for everything.
Why would they say
what
that?
What the hell? It's because the directness here, right, is viewed as aggression. And it's not, right? It's not aggressiveness. It's just straightforward honesty. The way that people talk here, I've used this analogy, right? Like, when you give a dog a pill, medicine, right? You wrap it in all this cheese so that they won't throw it up, right? In Western cultures, especially in the US, right? Critical feedback is like that pill, and it's wrapped in so much positivity and, hey, thanks so much for the effort. Boy, you guys are obviously really working hard. Yeah, like, this is really good. That's really good. If you have something critical say, it's like you have to first go with a bunch of great, and then you critical feedback, and then more great stuff again. This wrapper. And that, if you do that here, right, with CIS folks, that is viewed as, at best, it is just wasting their time.
Inefficient.
Yeah, lots of words, right? Blah, blah, blah. And at worst, it's viewed as a form of dishonesty, right? Just tell me what you think, man. Like, respect me enough to tell me the truth, right? That directness, which I actually love. I was always the kind of the rough guy at Activision who needed to be told to, be a little more.
You had the spirit all along, right?
Apparently, yeah. Okay. Like, by accident, I've managed to find my niche. Where, here I'm very direct. I'll tell, if I think something's fucked up, I'll tell them it's fucked up. I just won't scream at them about it.
Sure,
right?
Fair enough.
I won't.
Right.
I'll just say, look, this isn't good enough. and here's why, right? Because this, and here's what I think we should do. Do you agree? Does this work? Strangely here, that's viewed as very diplomatic. So it works out well, right? But that was definitely the biggest thing that I had to get through was learning how to work with that, right? And how to once I finally got it, it was like, for me, it was like, are you kidding? This is brilliant. I love this, right? But it just took a minute to get there.
Okay. So Thaine, what's next for Tanks Mobile? Are you going to expand the game forever? Is that the ambition?
Yeah. So look, I'll say, first of all, we're actually going to be renaming the studio.
Oh.
We're rebranding. We will be known as MS1. Logo pending, TBD, all that. You're the first person outside of Wargaming to hear that,
stuff,
actually.
Folks. Okay.
And part of that is, we just wanted to make sure our identity was really clear. Things like Wargaming Mobile Minsk is really a mouthful.
It is. I struggle to pronounce that. Yeah.
And look, also, we've just opened actually a small development studio as part of our team in Moscow.
Mm.
We've hired one person now. Our director of development is in place. We're going to build it out, start just with like a 6 to 10 person group, building features for Blitz. But we are actually working on new product in the studio as well. We're using Unreal Engine for all our go forward stuff. Everything going forward is an Unreal. We're going to be building, nothing's going to be, we can't talk about it all now, right? It's too early, but like none of it will be too far from, we're not going to suddenly start doing, hyper casual games and, or match 3 or dating simulators or something, right? It's all going to be, action core kind of games that we know how to do. But we're working on new things. The way I look at Blitz, Blitz obviously, the fact that it's going up again after 5 years means there's plenty of more runway to it. So I think as a product, Blitz is going to continue for quite a while. But we're also thinking about Blitz not just as a product, right? But like with Call of Duty, it's not just about one, right? It's about a franchise. So we're thinking about how do we make sure that Blitz is something that keeps going, not even just for the next 5 years, right? But what's 5, what's 10, what's 15, 20 look like, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about it, are there ways we can expand it, right? So that people keep loving the game, but we give them new things, right? Can we give things to people who aren't yet Blitz players and have them come in and enjoy it? Make it bigger, more inclusive, right? So it's not just the hardcore guys that love it now, but we can expand it out without leaving them behind. So yeah, we got a lot of ideas. We got a lot of ambitions, and we're starting to execute on all those right now, including in Moscow.
Cool. A lot of ideas for the future. But looking back at over like 20 years that you spent in the industry, what were the defining experiences that you had that made you the professional you are today?
Clearly, the move from legal and into the production thing, man. I was worried about it at the time. I wasn't so sure, but making that move, I wouldn't trade it for the world, right? I love it. I enjoy the hell out of it. The best part with legal was, man, I woke up every morning, I knew exactly what I was doing every day.
All right.
The worst part I knew exactly every day,
every bloody day.
Man, in production, whatever you think you're going to be doing in the beginning of the day, it's not what you're going to be doing by the end. Like, things are going to go so crazy. All sorts of things are going to change. Games is this weird intersection of entertainment and IT, right? All the things that could go wrong in IT. You build it exactly the way you wanted it to, and the engine just doesn't work, and there's a bug. That's one set of problems. IT kind of problems, right? Yeah. The entertainment problems are, you built it exactly the way you wanted it to, exactly the way the design doc said it would. It's bug-free, it's working like it's intended, and it turns out it's just not fun. Well, now what do you do, right? So in games, you have both of those problems put together on a daily basis can screw you over, or some combination of them. So that's why literally any given day, it's always something new, right? Mm-hmm. Clearly for me, formative moments, I tell people all the time, people talk about like, oh, you worked on Call of Duty, Destiny, you must have learned so much from those. Like, yeah, but you know what you really learn from? The worst games.
Huh.
Because the really successful ones, maybe there just wasn't an iceberg to hit, right? And so you sailed free. the games that are really tough, the games where everything went wrong, those are the ones where you learn to fix things, right? Where you have to get creative when you have hit the iceberg and it's time to, get onto the lifeboats or get onto a new boat and figure out how to make it happen. Those are the ones that you really, really, really learn on. I don't want to name names around which games those
Fair
are,
enough.
but I've had the privilege of working on some really amazing games and some really awful games too. Although seriously, I've had the privilege to work with some of the most incredible developers in the industry. And obviously, you pick up so many things, right? Working with the Infinity Ward guys, the Treyarch guys, the Bungie guys, honestly, there's tons more even in that list, right? I've learned great things about how to do it from each of them and from a lot of individuals even inside of those companies. And the great thing is now I get to take that with me and learn all these great things that Wargaming brings to the table, right? And add those in. And for me, that's the most fun of it, right? I'm in this 20 years and I'm still learning new things. I'm adding value. I feel good about that, but I'm learning too, right? It's a two-way street. So I feel great about that.
And Thaine, just to wrap it up, maybe some words of wisdom that you could share with studios or professionals who are working on maturing IP?
Oh, wow. Yeah. The things that you think are sacred cows aren't. The rules that you have constrained yourself to in a maturing IP that you think are the things that are the holy molten surface of your IP, they are the things that are holding you back, actually. They are the things that are preventing you from being willing to take risks with your IP and experiment and do something fun. The worst thing you can do isn't pissing off your players. If you piss off your players with an update, a change, whatever, you can roll it back. You can do different things, right? The worst thing you can do is bore them to death.
Right.
That's the worst. Kill your sacred cows, man. That's it. That's my best advice I can give for maturing IPs.